Okay, today we are going to talk about the potential role of biotech in delaying our life or delaying the life of the elderly. So just observe the people around you. Just look at the people around us. Some live a long life. I'm sure you notice. But are they going to die eventually? Or do you think they are going to live forever? So there's a new concept called the immortalism objective. And many people think that this immortalism objective is very individualistic. It doesn't serve any purpose for social justice. It may increase the dependency ratio between the elderly and the working age population. And this may increase the healthcare, the financial, or other social burdens for the government. And as we are going to see later, the immortalism perspective may affect economic growth and prosperity if we keep delaying the aging process. And there are two ways how this immortalism process works. One is through decelerated aging, where we slow down the aging process through various treatments, medicines, pills, you name it. I'm sure you've seen enough on TV commercials. And the second way immortalism works would be arrested aging. Here, I think we haven't really seen any evidence, any manifestation of arrested aging in society, in many societies, I think, in my humble opinion. Some advertisers commercials, they claim that they can delay or defer the aging process for indefinite periods. Or maybe some of these technologies we are going to see in the next slide. They claim that they can delay or defer the aging process for indefinite periods of time. But we don't know how effective they are. Because I'm sure you know, most people we observe around us, it seems that even if they had a long life, they eventually die. And this immortalism objective or perspective sometimes can lead to more economic or environmental problems. When less working age population is going to support more and more elderly population, the dependency ratio is going to become smaller and smaller. And this, like what I mentioned earlier, is going to increase the economic, the financial burdens or the healthcare problems or burdens of the government. And if this immortalism perspective can slow down the process of aging, or it can delay aging for indefinite periods of time, there may be more and more people in a given society. And these increased numbers of people or population, they may consume more resources, they may consume more energy, and this may lead to environmental problems, maybe in the short run or in the long run, because it can lead to the depletion of natural resources. If we have more and more elderly in the population, because due to technologies, so on and so forth, they may not die so soon. They may continue to consume all these natural resources. And eventually, it's going to deplete all these natural and environmental resources. It may lead to more air quality problems, pollution problems, you name it. And here are some of the techniques. These techniques focus on somatic maintenance that researchers claim that they can be used to prolong or delay the aging process, prolongs people's lifespan essentially. We have rejuvenation science, geriatric engineering, life extension projects that focuses on cybernetics and informatics, heart transplant, tissue culture, nanotechnology. Nanotechnology is a bottom-up approach. And I'm not sure if you know, our sunscreen is created or produced based on this technology. Or our water-resistant products and clothings. They are created on nanotechnology too, either through engineering that isolates or eradicates bacteria or clog arteries. These procedures may delay or prolong lifespan to some extent. Prolongation gimmetry, synchronics and nanoproteins machines. And sometimes researchers or medical professionals, they try to delay a person's aging process or extend a person's lifespan through more natural means like restricting certain calorie intakes. Maybe encourage the elderly to restrict their intakes in fatty food, unhealthy food, to prevent diabetes. And this in turn can delay the aging process or extend a person's life. And some use artificial intelligence techniques, where you upload the brain into an electronic chip, or you copy the brain into an electronic system. So, related to the immortalist perspective would be a transhuman's world, when lifespan can be extended. It's going to create a transhuman's world. And this transhuman's world, as we mentioned earlier, is going to be characterized by inequalities that takes on new forms or disparities that takes on new forms at the global level. If these techniques, the ones we saw on the previous slides, are not covered by insurance, people in maybe first world developed countries can afford those techniques, but not people who live in less developed or third world countries. This is going to create disparities on a global scale. And this is going to make the dependent ratios in the first world countries and in the less developed countries looks a lot more different than they usually are. And this can also cause racial or ethnic inequalities. Some racial ethnic groups may be more able to afford those technologies, while other racial ethnic groups, they cannot afford those technologies. So because of that, this is going to transform the nature of racial inequalities into unknown directions. Like what we mentioned earlier, different dimensions of inequality interacts and intersects. Racial inequality often interacts with gender inequality, with age and income inequality. So, if we extend the lifespan for the elderly to the point that it creates a transhuman society, it may widen the existing racial disparities in terms of income, education, health, or other aspects. And this can lead to intergenerational inequalities too. The younger generations, the generations that have to support those elderlies, they may resent the fact that the elderly have access to all these technologies to prolong lifespan, to extend aging. when the elderly live longer, it may increase the burden of the younger generations if they have to support the older generations through direct and indirect means. Direct means would be maybe family transfer. You give money to your elderly parents, or you provide food and other kinds of in-kind supports for your elderly parents or elderly relatives. Those are direct forms of transfer. And the direct forms of transfer may increase for the younger generation. They may have to support their elderly parents for longer periods of time. And intergenerational transfer can also happen indirectly through the government, through the social security. So as we can see, even through indirect transfer, if the elderly can live longer, the younger generations may need to support the older generations through taxes, through social security and other means for longer periods of time. And this may create generational conflicts. The younger generations or the middle age may resent that. The working age population may not like it if they have to support the elderly for longer periods of time. And we are not sure whether we have enough resources to sustain a transhuman society. And oftentimes, the technologies we saw from the last slide, they focus on physical health. They don't really focus on mental health. So if that's the case, this may lead to psychological malfunctioning of the elderly, even if their lives were extended. And to this day, there's still no effective brain-enhancing antidepressant drugs for these elderly people if we extend their lifespan. So when there are intergenerational conflict, this is going to give rise to a form of political economy of aging, where different generations, the teenagers, the young adults, the middle age, and the elderly, they will be competing for the limited resources in a given society. Water, air, income, wages, employment for longer periods of time. And who will pay for all this technology? Do we have enough resources in a given society to pay for all these technologies we saw from the last slide? And this is going to create problems associated with the balance of power between different societies, different countries. Some countries, if they have access to these technologies, they may experience a more rejuvenated processes of aging. And other countries, poorer countries, that cannot afford these technologies, elderly in those countries are going to go through a natural aging process. And this may create a balance of power problems between the elderly in the first world country and the less developed countries.